to make sure I can make it all the way through Steve's phone as well. If you want, on you, I don't know if you have if you have a smartphone, you could log in through your phone also, if that's helpful to you, that you hear it directly that way.
I could do what? I lost you there.
You could log in to Zoom through your phone.
I don't know how to do that. I was just telling Steve, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. It's the same link that you got in here, but it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry.
If you have your phone, I can call you. Does that work?
You can call my phone, sure.
Do you mind? Okay, that's probably better than listening through Steve. Okay. Goodbye, Steve.
Bye.
Yeah, let's see here. Okay, here we go. Hold on. There we go. Okay, you hear me?
Oh, much better. Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So we are in Reish and Zayin, Sif Aleph. We began our discussion about the laws of Hatmana. Just to review, let's just reread the first Sif in the Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll continue where we left off in terms of the. Bobby, can you hear me, Hinda? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. Let's reread that, and then we'll continue where we left off in the mission of our last time. Just let's start again. Ein tomrim b'Shabbos afilu b'davar she'eino mosif hevel. Rule number one: you can't do hatmana on Shabbos, even in a situation where there is no increase in the heat source. You know, it is right, increasing heat source. Right, it's mosif hevel. Hevel means like almost like steam, heat. So even if it's eino mosif hevel, you can't do hatmana. So hatmana across the board on Shabbos is something that we do not do. And so even if it's like that, we'll just be retaining heat. Again, where it's enveloped, not that it's open on any of the sides. Then if it's open on any of the sides, not a problem. That's not called hatmana. Hatmana is when it's enveloped on all sides.
Even if it's not on a heat source?
Even if it's not on a heat source. Yes, that's what it seems like. Afilu b'davar she'eino mosif hevel. That's correct. Right? Like they gave the example that was given by the Mishnah Berurah, karim ksasos, pillows, like a pillow. Imagine taking a pillowcase, right? Or a blanket and wrapping it in a blanket. Obviously, it's not adding heat, it's just retaining the heat. Nonetheless, that is not allowed. We talked about let's just review the reason the Mishnah Berurah explained why is this a problem. The rabbis did not allow this because perhaps you'll find a pot that has just cooled down a little bit, and you will, by putting it back in by putting it into a hatmana situation, you will cause it to reboil, to gain a little bit of heat. And therefore you are you're chayiv because of mivashel. So we say don't bother with this whole situation, so you don't get any bigger punishments for having violated Yisro on Shabbos.
But you can't add heat in a situation like that. You can retain heat, but you can't add heat.
You're saying on a physics level.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
On a practical level.
It was even that way.
Yeah. So my understanding of this is that we don't even allow the davar shemosif hevel because we might put in a davar shemosif hevel, which would possibly bring it to a boil. So we ban all hatmana altogether. Okay, that's on Shabbos. Erev Shabbos we're going to have a heter, but not on Shabbos. Okay. All right. Hopefully that's all right. I'm just gonna mute your mic, and if you wanna, there we go. Perfect. Yeah, because there's a feedback on the Zoom feed. Okay, thank you. All right. So that's why, whether we like it or we don't like it, this is not it's not off brand. This is there was a great fear here that people would make mistakes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right, and that's what the second part of the Mishnah Berurah, by the way, Hinda said last week. It said, even if you say, oh, you're not chayiv on bishul, because come on, how could that be even possible? Number one, it's already been cooked, so what are you going to bring it back to? Well, first of all, that's a separate problem. But even like, let's say with the davar shemosif hevel, maybe you could say, because what reward? You'll put it back over a fire. You'll do hatmana over a fire, over a heat source, and then you'll start to stoke the coal. That could be another reason why. So it's not just because of mivashel, but again, in the davar she'ena mosif hevel, you have to say it's because of the davar, because it's because we don't want you to do it in a davar hamosif hevel. So it's a geder where we put up a fence here against all hatmana on Shabbos. It's quite a geder.
Because, one thing with Mosif, you have to do something.
Right. If you're just saying, oh, I put a blanket around it, and not in the blech, like I put it on a blanket, wrap it in a blanket. Yeah. So it's something, the Eino Mosif Hevel, situation, yeah, look, it's a bit of it's a whopper. Look, again, I can see why someone wants to keep something hot, right? So when you want to do that on Shabbos, put the towel over it or whatever, but leave a little bit of side, the sides exposed or something like that of the pot, and then you're okay. You're makayim, that it's not hazmana. Yeah. Sorry, Shlomo, what did you want to say?
Where are we on this?
So we're just rereading this Sif Aleph on top right now in the Shulchan Aruch, where it says the second sentence, there's an aval b'safek chashecha. Okay, you see that in the Rishon time? Okay. Aval b'safek chashecha, tomnin bo. Anyone pay attention this week during Bava Madlikin? So this is when it's safek chashecha, which we'll talk more about, as the Mishnah Berurah alludes to. Sif Beis, I don't know if we read this last time. Safek HaShecha, Ayin Lekamam B'Simin Reish Samech Aleph, Sif Aleph. We're going to talk a lot. That's the Simin about Zman Habakas Neros, about the time for lighting candles. And we'll look over there in the Ramah, but Masha Kasav Nusham, and I took a look yesterday. Is a discussion about what you can and can't do during Safek HaShecha, when it's a Safek, whether it's dark, really, which is after sunset, but before it's Tzeis HaKochavim. It's unclear, and for many halachos we say it's unclear whether it's day or night. Okay, that's why when we say Kriya Shema, we try to ensure that we say the three paragraphs of the Shema after it's clearly Pesach Kochavim, exactly the three stars that emerge. If you say it earlier, which is what we do here in Shul, so you should repeat it again later. So there are a lot of halachos that depend on that, where things are in limbo in this twilight zone. So this is also one of them. Can I do hatmana? It's a rabbinic decree. So if it's a safek hashecha, so you're allowed to do hatmana. And a davar she'eno mosif hevel. Davar hamosif hevel you can't even do on Shabbos. Erev Shabbos in the Shabbos, we'll see in a moment. Mosif hevel means it adds and increases heat. So like there's a heat source underneath.
Right.
Like imagine putting it over top of your hot plate. And then you wrap it and then you put it on top of your hot plate.
Okay.
So that's not
allowed.
That's not allowed. No, you are allowed. Safek hashecha tomnin bo. You are allowed to do hatmana, but if it's eino mosif hevel, like a blanket or a pillowcase, right? Ve'ein tomnin b'davar hamosif hevel afilu lubi be'ajom. But if it's a davar hamosif hevel, and that's not just your hot plate. It's not just your whatever. There's also, by the way, the Gemara talks about you put it inside. They imagine, by the way, that hatmana, you were actually burying it in things. It would be in a pot, and you would bury the pot in a pile of, olive scraps, which again, that would increase heat. You have here, it's almost like, again, it's like when you're composting, the compost piles are not cold. Compost piles are hot. So similarly, Chazal were aware of this, that when you put it into certain things, certain substances, it will actually increase the heat. So even those things will be problematic from Erev Shabbos and the Shabbos. Anything that increases heat is a no-no when it comes to Hatmana, even Erev Shabbos into Shabbos. Take a look now at the Mishnah Berurah explaining why that's the case. Let's start with Gimel. Tomnin bo, distam kederos bein hashmashos, rot chosein. Why would I say Safek Hashech is allowed? When it's, why am I allowing that to happen? Because the average pot, a stam kedera, during the twilight period, what's its status? Rot chosein. There's an assumption that's made here that those pots are very hot. They're boiling right now because Shabbos has just, the sun has just set. The food is hot. Don't come in here and say, oh, it got cold and now it's going to heat up again. That was when it's Shabbos. We'll worry to do bishul again. It cooled down and I'm going to reheat it. It's going to end up reheating it. No. That's leka lemigzar gzera. That gzera doesn't make sense in Bein Hashmashos when most of the pots are hot right now. They're very hot. Daled, sif daled, bedavar hamosif havel. So the Mishnah Berurah here says, Hainu l'tzorech Shabbos. Now here comes an interesting discussion. When am I not allowed to put things in a davar hamosif havel that increases heat? When I'm putting the food item in there that I want to use on Shabbos. Aval l'tzorech motzoi Shabbos. But if, let's say, I have a party after Shabbos that I am hosting, and I want to have my food ready to go after Shabbos, so I bury it in the pile of. That's why I'm going to use olives here, right? Olive scraps, and it stays there the entirety of Shabbos.
I did it before Shabbos.
I did it before Shabbos. On Shabbos, that's a separate problem. Now we're talking about bishul potentially because I'm adding heat. Forget on Shabbos. On Shabbos, you can't do anything. Before Shabbos, I put it in the pile of olive scraps, and it's doing its thing, and it's adding heat. So, is that allowed? Apparently, yes, according to this interpretation. Buchach mi siman tafresh tes bahagasham de'ein matminim bechol gavne. Look at this siman tafresh tes in the Ramah there. He says that. Sorry, I lost my. Oh, de'ein matminim bechol gavne. You can't do hatmana in all manners, which would mean that you could do it in some manners. Okay, now what's the topic over there here? If I'm not mistaken, that's Simon. I just upgraded my phone, so Safari doesn't work anymore. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's the halachos of what happens when you upgrade your phone. I couldn't charge my phone anymore, so I had to get a new phone, and now Safari doesn't work. But I'll on the web you can get it to work here. Hold on.
What's Safari ever?
You have it? I have it on my phone actually now. I'm good. So here, if you go to Taf Reish, so this is 600 and, what was the simon again? 609, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah, 609. The mom is saying there's the laws of Yom Kippur. Yeah, so let's say you want to do Hatmana from Erev Yom Kippur, so you have hot food right when Yom Kippur ends. You want to come home, and have delicious food to break your fast. So it says mutter, the Shulchan Aruch, mutter lahat min chamim be'erev Yom Kippur, and motzoi Yom Kippur. You're allowed to do hatmana from Erev Yom Kippur to Motzei Yom Kippur. I'm obviously not going to eat it on Yom Kippur. I'm not planning on eating it, even for, let's say, my children. I'm not doing hatmana for my children, just for myself. It's for after Yom Kippur. Ramah over there says v'yeshom she'ein lahat min Yom Kippurim, and he says some say that you shouldn't do hatmana on Yom Kippur. And that's the minhag in our countries, he says, the Rama. But this is, at least there's a concept here. There's a concept, in this context, to the idea of a hatmana from Erev the day to the Motzei of the day. Now, yes, it's true, the Rama didn't like it. But the Mishnah Berurah there writes the following. Okay, so you don't have this here. I'm reading the Mishnah Berurah from Hilchot Shabbat. He's commenting on the Ramah's position that you shouldn't do hatmana from Erev Yom Kippur to after Yom Kippur. Shnir the Yom Kippur misbashal betanur l'tzorechol. It looks like that you're cooking on Yom Kippur for the weekdays. No, you're not actually, but it looks like it. It's not right. It looks like you're cooking, but you're not. Even if, let's say, I put it in the morning, Erev Yom Kippur. So in the morning, you put it in the hatmana situation. Ein lasos hatmana zo. Uvachol gavne im abar v'hitmin ein sarech lahamtiv motzay yom kippurim b'chdei shiyas. If you do hatmana in any of these manners, if you violate it, you don't need to wait b'chdei shiyasu afterwards. Which really tells you what? It's not really us. I mean, if that's the minute, we don't do it at Ashkenazim. Anyways, today we have better ways to heat up food after Yom Kippur. But it shows you really by the letter of the law, it probably should be allowed to do Hatzmana from Erev Yom Kippur to after Yom Kippur. So he says here, right? It's Muchach from Simon Tefershtash in the Ramah. The Ein Mat Min Chol Gavne. Yes, it's true. We don't do Hatzmana over there in any manner. Kain Kasav Magen Aram. That's what the Ramah. That's what the Magen Aram says as well. Tamal Zeh. But he's like, I don't understand. Umasik Darak Chumra Shu Shinagu Kain Velo Midina. And at the end of the day, the Magen Avraham even himself says the whole thing is a whopper of a chumrah, and it's a minhag that we don't do it. Ashkenazim don't do it, but not by lo midina. It's not by the letter of the law. It's a Ashkenazi minhag that developed. We don't do it. We don't do it from Erev Yom Kippur to after Yom Kippur. So what you should see here is that for Shabbos, by the letter of the law, it should be allowed as well. By Yom Kippur and Shabbos, there aren't many differences. Anyways, v'ayin b'levush be'eli rabasham mashka safna b'zeh did who b'vaday motel lahatmin l'tzorach motzai Shabbos ve'eid sham afilu minag lahachmin. The Elia Rabbah and the levush, they both talk about this issue. Sham mashka safna b'zeh, and according to them, for sure it's motel to do hatmana l'tzorach motzai Shabbos, and he says there's no minag to be machmir at all. So if you have a party, halacha l'maisa. You have a party on Motzei Shabbos, and you're preparing on Friday afternoon for it. And you want to have things that are hot and they're ready to go, and you want to do hatmana. You put it into some situation where you're doing hatmana for after Shabbos. Perfectly allowed. Now, again, today this is not so relevant because we have such an easy ability from access to ovens that not everyone had an oven. Not that long ago, Jews didn't have ovens in their houses. They had communal ovens in many places. So today this is not as relevant, but in theory, you could do hatmana from Erev Shabbos to Motzei Shabbos. You can't do it for Tzorech Shabbos though. Okay. Sif Hey.
So what happens in the hatmana ben hashmashot? When you do hatmana ben hashmashot, and Shabbat starts, you have to stop. You have to fold. Let's say you cover it with blanket all around. So
if it was on a heat source, if it was Eina Mosif Hevel,
no Mosif Hevel ben hashmashot. It's not really.
It's allowed then, and then you'll keep it covered. You can keep it covered until you open it.
Oh, so you don't have to wait. You don't have to pull it before Shabbat.
No. If it's Mosif Hevel, if it's in then you have to pull it out. But yes, correct. If it's Eina Mosif Hevel, you can leave it.
Put it in Mosif Hevel ben hashmashot, right?
For Mosif Hevel, you can't put it in, even Erev Shabbos, going into Shabbos,
right?
At all. If it's Davar She'eina Mosif Hevel,
you can remove it in Shabbat when you need.
Exactly. Whenever you need it, then you're done. Yeah. Sif Katan Hey Hamosif Hevel. Gzeira Shemayatmin be'efer sheyesh bo gechalim v'yechata b'Shabbos. Why can you not put it Erev Shabbos? Come on, Erev Shabbos. I can't put it on Davar Hamosif Hevel. I was allowed to do Shahiyah, right, from Erev Shabbos. So why now you tell me I can't do things from Erev Shabbos into Shabbos? Why? So it says it's a decree. Perhaps you will do Hatmana in Afer, in like ashes, where there are Gecholim, where there are actual coals. Put it down into the coals. V'yechata b'Shabbos, and you'll move the coals around on Shabbos. So again, the Yechata b'Gecholim is, now I don't have to translate these words anymore. The stoking the coals, we've seen this time and again, rearing its head. So here, that's why we don't even Erev Shabbos in the Shabbos, because maybe on Shabbos. And now here's a real fear, though. By the way, if you do hatmana down into a pile of coals, in order to get to the food, you will have to move the coals. You'll have to take some instrument and move the coals in order to create a path where then you could put on gloves and go in there and take the thing out.
Even if you move it, even if you pull it, you can move it.
Right, exactly. So there, that's a bigger, at least I hear that. That it's now impossible because I put it down into the coals. Coals will end up moving as a result, which will be potential violation of Havara of creating a flame, a larger
But
flame.
that's Musif Hevel.
on
You're not
Shabbat.
supposed to do that before Shabbat anyway.
That's why. He gives an explanation why
Or
not.
why you're not supposed to do
Even
Musif
Erev
Hevel.
Shabbos, because then on Shabbos you might end
Right,
up moving the.
right.
Now you don't have to do it in a pile of. You don't have to do it in a pile of coals, but because you might put it in a pile of coals, you can't even put it in a pile of something else. That's the Xera. Okay, that's just we're all on the same page. We understand where it comes from. Okay.
If you put it in the pile of coals, but the top is left uncovered, that's allowed, right?
Yes, that is
Now,
correct.
when you pull the pot out, you want to tell me the coals aren't going to be moving?
Yes, you're absolutely right, and that will in of itself get into the discussion of secration. Whether or not in a situation like that where that's going to probably create bavada, that's going to move the coals and that's going to create a larger flame. The question is, am I allowed to do it if it's lo nichale? I don't care. I'm taking the pot out. I don't actually have any usage for this fire anymore. If there are still foods down left in the pile, for sure it's not allowed. If that's the only one, you can make a claim that and that's it's a discussion, and we will get into that more as we get into some of the laws of Hilchot Shabbos. But according to at least the simple reading of the Shulchan Aruch, Psik Reisha de lo nichale, where I don't care what happened, that it happened. On a deoraisa is mutter. Tosfos doesn't like this. We try to, generally speaking, only paskin like Tosfos, where if it's the Rabbanon, we allow it to go. For deoraisas, we really try to avoid it unless there's really no solution to the situation. When we get to the siman about there's a situation where a barrel of wine is broken and I think it's broken or there's a pekak, there's a stop, and then in order to pull out the thing, it's going to squeeze the grapes out, and it's the wine that's absorbed into the towel, as it were, and you pull it out and it'll squeeze the liquid out. So it's a violation of shlita. But the Shulchan Aruch seems to allow the situation. Well, when we get to that siman, we'll talk a lot about Psik Reisha, the lo nichale on a doraisa. So it's a big question, but I would say that perhaps here they're worried more about the stoking of the coals as opposed to the pulling out. The pulling out, yes, is also a problem, but the just stoking the coals here, as we've seen before, I think is probably what the main goal is here with this gezerah. Vav afilu miba'ojom. Even on Erev Shabbos, you can't do a Atmana situation in a Davar HaMosif Hevel. Kasan HaPrima Gadim, and the Prima Gadim writes, sorry, the Afilu Im Hitmin Kodam Chatzos Baboker. Even if you put it in Friday morning, before midday, Friday morning, I do this. Mikol Mokom Avid Isura Kishemashe Ba'atmana Zo Al Shabbos. If you nonetheless, you will have done a prohibition if you leave it in that situation, in a hatmana situation on Shabbos, and you don't remove it before dark. It's not to say that on Friday you can't do hatmana. It just you in a mosif, davar hamosif hevel. You just have to remove it before Shabbos. It might be actually a very clever way to keep your food warm, for Friday night. But you have to remove it right before the sun goes down.
Okay, so what's the difference between when you put something in a slow cooker, it's started before Shabbos and it keeps going on Shabbos?
Yeah.
Like make a cholent like that.
Yeah.
And this, there you're actually actively giving it heat.
Right.
Why if it started before Shabbos, you couldn't maintain, use it on Shabbos?
Yes.
What's the difference?
So the answer to that question is that it all comes back to the coals. The situation if hatmana here, as you see, there's a fear that you may do hatmana in a situation where there will be coals, and then you'll stoke the coals. When you have the cholent that was put up before 5 minutes before Shabbos, then the rabbis are not worried they're going to stoke the coals. Why? Because it's for lunch. It's not going to be, even if I stoke the coals tonight 100 times, I could play with the fire. It's not going to be ready tonight, so it's going to be for lunch. And by the time the morning comes, it'll already be ready. I don't need to play with it. So therefore, since there's no incentive at all to use the coals. Therefore, they allow that situation, right? It all comes down to what are the, I don't want to say incentives. What's the situation? Is there a potential Isser that's going to be violated or not? In the situation of the Cholent 5 minutes before Shabbos, the rabbis couldn't envision anyone, making a mistake. But it's sorry, I'm
What
going to
about
turn this off.
the process of cooking on Shabbat?
I mean,
It's cooking. It's
It
cooking on
doesn't,
Shabbat.
but if I do it here again, let's remember. Sorry, I'm just turning this off so it doesn't make that noise. There's no prohibition on a biblical level of cooking if I put the food into a heating situation, Erev Shabbos into Shabbos. What's at stake here is only a rabbinic decree. And in certain circumstances, they made that decree because they were worried that certain things would be violated, namely Havara, in terms of playing with the coals. And in certain circumstances, like the Cholent 5 minutes before Shabbos, they were not concerned, and therefore they did not, make a decree in that situation. So it all comes down to the situation at hand, and then, whether or not they made a decree in that situation. So you have to sort of take it case by case.
So
That's
let
my
me
best
ask you,
answer.
It logically doesn't work.
The lot you're saying because at the end of the day, one is cooking,
Yeah,
one
no,
is retaining.
What
the
is the
heat.
difference?
Yeah, well, just retaining the heat. I mean, what,
Yeah, I hear because what
What
you're
is the
saying one is
difference
cooked.
when you
yeah.
have soup and you cannot warm it on Shabbat? You have a black, you want to put it on a black. You
Right.
You cannot warm it
So
up.
that's a problem of cooking. That's
But
because
it's
of
not
liquid.
cooking, it's already cooked,
So when it comes to liquids like a soup,
right?
so we do say yesh bishul achar bishul, that there is cooking after cooking. When it comes to dry foods, right? To make it very simple, grilled chicken, right? And you want to reheat grilled chicken on Shabbos, that's not called cooking because it's already been cooked. But when it's a liquid and it's cooled down all the way to room temperature, and I reheat the soup all the way back up, that's cooking. That is considered bishul. That's why we're machmir not to really reheat liquid foods on
But you would
Shabbos
say
day.
it's the same process when you have the chulin, because chulin is actually cooking as well. Just because it started cooking, you didn't stop it.
Right.
You allow it to cook, but if you stop it, then you're not allowed to cook.
If you pull the cholent pot off the crock
Right,
pot,
because I see.
if you pulled it off and then you put it back on without the conditions of chazara,
Right.
yes, it will be an issue.
Right.
It would absolutely be an issue. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go back in the Shulchan Aruch up on top. V'im hitmin bedavar hamosif hevel. If you do hatmana in a davar hamosif hevel, in my edition, I'm turning the page. Atav shel aser afilu b'diavad. The food which you or matmin is prohibited, even b'diavad, meaning even after the usually with the avad. Oh, we'll allow certain. No. Even b'diavad here, meaning after the fact, it's still not allowed. It's still not allowed. Yeah, sorry,
We're talking about if it goes into Shabbat, right?
Yes. If I take it out before Shabbos, no problem. Yeah. Now, what's the situation where it's aser afilu b'diavad? Right? Dafka b'tzonein shenischamim, o shenitztamek v'yafelo. Aval be'omei b'chamimuso kesha rishona mutar. Now, let me be very clear. Hatmana b'davar hamosif hevel is not allowed. Okay, it's not allowed. So, sorry. So that's not allowed. What we're talking about here is after the fact, can I have the food if the mistake was made? So at first he says no. When is that the case? Specifically bitzonein, when it was cold and it reheated. Take the soup case, right? You had a soup, it would cool down, and because it was in a davar shemosif hevel, now I have hot soup. That's what I'm not allowed to consume the soup. Okay? Oh, shenitz tamek v'yafelo, or the continuation of its cooking, even though you'll say it's fully cooked, the continuation of its cooking. The drying out of the food is actually good for it, meaning it enhances the flavor. So it's done cooking, but the continuation of the cooking is actually good. This was reviewing from months ago when we started the whole down this road of shahiyah and chazara, etc. That's when, even after the fact, I can't eat it. I can't consume this food. Aval But if let's say it was hot, and then I took the hot pot and I put it into a davar hamosif hevel on Shabbos, so it was boiling as it were. Keshar Rishon, as it was, beforehand, before I took it off. It's as piping hot as it was when it was, cooking, on the fire, or it was over the fire a few moments ago. Then, when I take it out of its hatmana situation, it's mutter to consume. It doesn't mean it's mutter to have done the hatmana in the first place. But after the fact, now you can still have this food on Shabbos. Okay? Take a look at Zion in the Mishnah Berurah. Oh, shenitztamik perush le'inyan di'avad. Again, as I said a moment ago, the whole topic here is b'di'avad, can I consume it? After the fact, can I now consume the food now that I've made the mistake? Even if the continuation of its cooking would actually be bad for the food, right? It would be drying out and becoming not as tasty. That's not allowed. Okay, that's not allowed.
But I thought that when it's stomach, you can use it.
What was that?
Oh yes, yeah, okay. It's stomach means okay.
Via fellow. That's when. Right, so here is our Varalo. Even in that case, Kemosha Kosu b'Siv Zion, as we'll see in Siv Zion, that even if it's mitstamek Varalo, you're not allowed to do hatmana with it. Okay, even if it's doing this hatmana actually is bad for the food, nonetheless, the rabbis said not allowed to do hatmana across the board. So lechatchila, you can't do this. B'diavad, okay, that's the whole question at hand. Ches, but omei b'chami muso. If it's standing, it continues to be, it's sort of standing and it's retaining its heat. Hatam dehalo ahani masav klal. What I'm doing by doing hatmana didn't help at all the food. So that didn't change anything in terms of the chemistry of the food. It was hot and now it's hot still. So I didn't. The food did not get enhanced by what I did. Okay, it was already done. Because of a Magen Avraham, the huadin hamatmin b'Shabbos b'davar she'ena mosif hevel. Same thing. If you are matmin on Shabbos in a davar she'ena mosif hevel, where it's not adding heat, the shari b'diavad af al gav the asa isur. Even though you did what you were not supposed to do, nonetheless, I'm allowed to consume the food. And that's even if I had taken a piping hot soup, was whatever. It was on the hot plate permissibly from before Shabbos. I set it up correctly. Now I want to do hatmana b'davar she'ena mosif hevel and a towel. So I'm not supposed to do that, but if I did it, so it's okay. It's not okay, but I can still consume this. Okay, after the fact, I can still consume it because it's the same theory. It's omei b'chami muso. It's just sort of what I did not enhance the food. Okay, I did what I was not supposed to do, but I can still consume it. Okay. Very good. Okay, let's just read the Ramah, and I think we'll probably pause for today, and we'll look at the Mishnah Berurah's comments next time. He says here, Yesh Omrim, the Imshachach v'Hitmin b'Shogeg. There are those that say that if I forget and I do hatmana not willingly, in a davar hamosif hevel, where it's adding heat, so shari lechol, so it is permissible to eat the food, which is an argument with the Shulchan Aruch's position, which was only only if it's only b'chayim muso, right, where it's sort of just same position it was before. Here I'm saying no, it's a davar hamosif hevel, mosif hevel. I mean that's going to add, he's obviously saying across the board. Otherwise, he's just repeating what the Shulchan Aruch said. Obviously, he's disagreeing. He's saying that in all across the board, you're allowed to consume it. And then he adds another opinion. Okay, v'yesh omrim the cholze eino aser ela k'she'osa l'tzorech laila. This is only a problem if you're doing it for the nighttime. But if it's for the Shabbos morning meal, motel lahatmin b'od yom b'davar shemosif hevel. It would be permissible. This is a huge statement which we'll have to analyze next time.
Wow.
It is permissible to do hatmana Erev Shabbos in a davar hamosif hevel. Uvediavad yesh lismoch hazeh. After the fact, it's not something you should do a priori, but after the fact, you can rely on this opinion. But as long as you're not relying on this
How could you make this
continuously.
mistake if you know you're gonna eat it the following morning? Or you're doing it intentionally and knowing that you're gonna use it the following morning, so how could that be that? When you have intention to do it for the night or the following morning.
You're saying, how could you even get a
should-
case of b'diavad?
Right.
Because it's not like I did it by
like you're
accident.
planning in advance for tonight or tomorrow.
But this is not b'diavad. It's not saying.
No, but he's saying at the end of the day, Ramah is saying b'diavad, you can rely on this last opinion. So Shlomo's pointing out, how could you even get a last opinion in a b'diavad situation? You did it on purpose. That's a sharp question. All right, a sharp question. All right, I gotta think about this one. But let's pause here. So we've laid out two more positions, two more shitos that we have to unpack, and then we'll talk about what is our position, today, in terms of hatmana. Okay, and then we'll keep going there. From there, a lot of detailed cases come up in the coming seifim. But these are the basic principles. Once you have the basic principles, then it's like in math. You have to just apply the rules to the problems. Okay.
The Mordechai, according to my.
Who had this last opinion? Oh yeah, the Mordechai. Yeah.